What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. We're going to be getting into 5 reasons why you should not boost your G35 or 350Z, specifically focusing on the DE engines because they can really only hold up to 400 horsepower before they pop. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got a boosted G35 here. I absolutely love it. This thing gives me so much happiness.
Right now, look at this. Oh my god, bro. Holy fuck, dude! She's getting loose already. Breaking loose. Oh my god! Oh my god, what the fuck, dude?
It took a lot of time and effort, and you feel amazing once you accomplish that. Getting the boosted build done, running amazing. It feels so good to be driving this thing down the road and hearing those good old turbo noises. We've got our boosted G35 here that made 575 wheel horsepower on our highest dyno day. And that was over at Z Fever in Tampa. We had Martin from RSNFLP tune our G35. We've actually had him tune it multiple times because of all the problems that we ran into. So in this video, I'm going to be bringing you guys 5 reasons why you should not boost your G35. Let's get right into reason number 1. Now, reason number 1 is the biggest reason for me. It's the cost of the entire build and what your goal is and what your current financial stability is. Dude, I'm like extremely white. Like, come on, camera, you gotta give me a break here. I'm not a ghost in real life. I mean, I am, but I'm not, okay, come on. Back when I decided that I wanted to go all out, full out, boosted, twin turbo build, I wanna make 600 plus horsepower. Back when I made that decision of what goal of the horsepower that I wanna make, was probably the worst time in my life to continue with boosting my G35. In September of 2019, I was in a car accident. Someone pulled out in front of me, and that accident left me with a broken L1 vertebrae. I was out of work for about 2.5 months. I could barely walk until maybe about 3 weeks in, and I decided that was the perfect time to spend 15 to 20 grand and boost my G35. So having a DE and wanting to make the numbers that I wanted to make, 600 horsepower, you can't make that on a stock internal DE, so you have to build it. So right off the bat, I had to buy a new engine, or at least rebuild my current engine. The last engine that I had rod knock, and I've already attempted to replace the bearings, blah blah blah, do like a kind of temporary band-aid fix, and it didn't work. So I went out and purchased a short block from IPP, Import Parts Pro, and we got the stage 1 good for up to, I think it was like 700 horsepower or so, as far as the bottom end. And we've already had cams from our NA build, and I got the heads decked and diamond surfaced over at Cylinder Head Depot. That also costed some money. In my cost breakdown, just in parts, I spent about $17,600, and I also had to spend even more money on top of that on the labor to get the engine rebuilt, because when I built it, I didn't build it correctly and the heads started lifting. So not only did I have to remove the engine from the car, I had to get it rebuilt by a shop, and I had to pay them another $2,000, which is cheap, to rebuild the engine and make sure that it's perfect, it's solid, so I can put it back in the car and get it running back to the dyno. Well over 20 grand just in the engine and the boosted build, the kit, the lower block, all the parts, the gauges, everything that I needed definitely set me back a lot, especially since I still got a house, rent, bills, all that shit to pay for. Your boy over here ran up a ton of credit cards. I have 5 credit cards. I ran them all up, like $5,000 each. Then I had like consolidated them so I can pay them off on another loan, and then I ran them up again like a freaking idiot. So this entire boosted G35 build was created off of credit cards, destroying my debt, and spending the next 2 years of my life trying to recover that. Nonetheless, I got exactly what I wanted. I could hear it go woo-doo-doo-doo, and I can beat anything that basically comes down the road, except for like extreme supercars and other boosted builds that have more than 600 horsepower. There are so many things that you don't anticipate going wrong when boosting your G35 or 350Z, or really any car. When you're boosting your car, you don't anticipate things breaking or things not working out the right way. Especially me, I purchased a used turbo kit, and we got it up on the dyno, first time, ready to rock. I was super happy, super nervous, and when we tried to make numbers, we had 2 issues. We had blow-by in the turbos. We had a ton of smoke coming out of the exhaust, which could have indicated a bunch of things like a bad head gasket or bad valve seals. And we also had a slipping clutch. It wasn't able to hold or grab after like 450 horsepower. So our first dyno day, we only made around 440, 450 horsepower. And it was really fun, it was really cool, but all the smoke coming out of the exhaust, the fact that if I tried to go harder on the gas, that my clutch was slipping, it would smell really bad. I knew that it wasn't, you know, that's not how it should be. So we gotta pull the engine out, we gotta figure out what's going on. I had to rebuild the turbos because the turbo seals. So first dyno day, we had multiple problems that I had to address if I wanted to continue to build them. Already this far, this much money I've spent, I have to fix it. We gotta figure out what's going on. So we saw that oil was leaking out of the turbo seals, and we figured out that number one, it could have been because of crankcase ventilation. I didn't have enough ventilation in the crankcase, so we got a new catch can. We got 4 different hoses going to it to vent the crankcase as best as possible. We ended up getting the Action Clutch Iron Man clutch that was sponsored to us, so really appreciate that from Action Clutch, and it's been holding up amazing. It was able to hold our horsepower that we're putting down, but we had to look into why it was spitting out so much smoke when we were letting off the gas. So the crankcase thing could have had something to do with it, but there was still a lot of pressure. It was still smoking once we rebuilt the turbos, so we had to pull the engine out. We had to rebuild the turbos, and we had to put everything back together. That is a pain in the butt, few days process in itself. Once I got everything back together, it was still smoking at the exhaust, and I couldn't figure out why, what is going on. So I did some more research, and we found out that the turbos weren't draining the oil properly. So we had to lower the oil level so that we can have proper drainage of the turbos instead of too much pressure building up and the oil was blowing through the turbo seals, causing all that smoke. So we lowered the oil level, and that was no problem. I didn't even have to rebuild the turbos, pull the engine, do all that stuff. I just had to lower the oil level, that's it. So all those headaches later, we were able to bring it back to the dyno, get it tuned, and it was ripping. So if you're somebody who just doesn't have 20 grand laying around to spend on your boosted build, now it could be cheaper, don't get me wrong, it could be a lot cheaper. If you don't want to build the bottom end, if you want to get a cheaper turbo kit, if you want to go other routes of doing things, you can. Now, I went as cheap as I thought I could. I got cheap gauges, I got a cheap mount for them, I got cheap wiring, cheap sensors, and I saved money there, but I went all out as far as the turbo kit, the build bottom end, and things like that. I did it at the wrong time in my life. With 20 grand, I could have invested that. I could have been way on top financially right now, and it is what it is. I got a boosted G35 and I'm in debt. Reason number 2, there are other options that you can go about either boosting your G35 or just making your G35 faster. The whole reason why we want to boost our Gs and Zs is because we want it to be faster. The stock 230 wheel horsepower that they come with is just not adequate for what we see the competition in the vehicles being created nowadays. With our 20-year-old car, we want to be able to beat that new Lambo, we want to be able to beat that new Corvette, but we can't do that unless we got some serious power to put down. So instead of spending 15 to 20 grand on your DE, there are other motors that you can swap in. You can do an LS swap, a VR30 swap. Shout out to Ray with NorTM for doing that VR30 swap, doing all the videos on it and really informing people on how you can do a swap like that. He was like the first YouTuber to do it. He works at Z1. Z1's also, they've also done a VR30 swap, and now I think Mikey Mike is doing one on his Z. So that's really awesome to see. He was able to start up a niche in the 370 world, VR30 swap. Really would be cool to see a VR30 swap G35 if somebody is looking to do that in the future. But other cheaper engines that you can get to swap into the G35 to make it faster and not have to spend 15 or 20 bands to make it faster. The VR30 already comes with turbos, and if you already have a 3.7 or 3.5, like a good engine, you can sell that to buy the VR30 since they're not extremely expensive right now. And then you just gotta figure out everything else as far as the electrical, the computer, the wiring, the routing. It's a headache, but so is boosting your G35. That was reason number 2. There are more options out there for you guys to look into as far as saving headaches and saving a budget and maybe even having a more reliable engine. So that brings me to reason number 3. When you boost your DE, or really when you're boosting any car, you're gonna have less reliability. You're gonna have more things installed in the engine to break or to fail. That can cause other catastrophic failure down the road. For example, turbos typically need coolant to keep them cool, and they need oil to keep the bearings from touching each other, from being metal on metal. And if there's any little failure in a hose, coolant leak, or an oil leak, that can cause failure to the turbos, which can send metal shards throughout the rest of the engine and if it's not caught quick enough, it can destroy your engine. You got a lot more vacuum lines that can cause the vehicle to run lean if they pop. If you're in mid boost and your vacuum line goes and it just causes a huge lean situation in the engine, that can also be a reason of engine failure. So less reliability. So back before I was boosted, I used to swing my G35 all the time. I used to, whenever it rains, and you know in Florida it rains every summer almost all day, every day, I used to hit every corner on the way home from work and just have a blast in it and not have to care about me over boosting or running lean or popping my engine. It would just do its thing. People have their stock DE engines running up to 250, even 300,000 miles because they can maintain it, and they're just that reliable. So speaking of maintenance, we got number 4 reason is the maintenance. It does take and cost a little bit more money towards the maintenance. You want to do more frequent oil changes, you want to make sure you always got fresh oil in there, helps everything kind of just run nice and smooth. If you're somebody like me who goes for a twin turbo setup, I know the AAM kit is a pain in the butt, and I know the Greddy twin turbo kit is a pain in the butt, but they sit on the bottom of the engine on both sides of each bank. So you got the turbos down on the bottom, and then you have your wastegates that kind of wrap around, at least for the Greddy kit, you got them wrapping around the transmission bell housing. So in order to drop the transmission, if you want to change your clutch or throw out bearing or anything like that, you got to drop the wastegates, and the bolts to the wastegates are basically impossible to get to while the engine is in the car. So right now I'm in a situation where I have to change the clutch in my car, and I can't just drop the tranny. I gotta pull the whole motor and tranny and everything out of the turbos, everything all as one, so that I can get to the bolts to remove the wastegates, so that I can get to the bolts to remove the transmission, so that I can change the clutch. Yeah, pain in the ass. So more frequent oil changes, and you also want to change your spark plugs a little bit more often, just because there's a lot more airflow, a lot more fuel kind of being pushed through the cylinders. So you want to clean up the spark plugs a little bit more often. So if you got to change them every 90 to 100K on a stock engine, you probably want to do it every 30, 40K on a boosted one. You also got other things like coolant hoses and oil hoses, like I was telling you about, that you want to keep maintained. You want to make sure they're not leaking. You want to make sure they're positioned in the right way. And yeah. And the 5th and final reason why you should not boost your G35 or 350Z is safety. I remember at one point the 350Z was the most fatal car that you can buy. Like, it had the most fatalities as far as car accidents and whatnot. That was a long time ago. I think now it's like a Dodge Dakota or something like that, being the most unsafe car. But when you boost and put more power in your car, the car was not specifically designed for that. I mean, Nissan knows what they're doing. You know, they know that people are going to be doing that, and they want to revamp certain things like their axles, their suspension, things like that. But the car basically was not made for it. So I got 600 horsepower pushing out of the G35 almost, and it makes it more dangerous to drive. I know when I was putting all this power in my car, my mom's like, please be careful, Aaron, don't take it out, don't hurt yourself. You know, with more power comes more responsibility. You really gotta learn how to handle the car. You gotta upgrade the tires, make sure you got some more traction. In some cases, you gotta upgrade the axles and things like that, because you snap an axle and you're going sideways into a barrier. That's not fun, man. My mom was pretty scared. I actually took her for a ride in the G when it was pushing some power, and she was freaking out. If you guys haven't watched that video, you guys can go ahead and watch that video of me scaring my mom in the boosted G35. It's a pretty cool video. But just play it safe. When you guys boost your G35, everything is done, you're super excited to get behind the wheel and just mat it. Just be careful. I used to, like I said, I used to swing my G all the time. I don't even want to put this thing sideways anymore. I got R888s all around the car. They got a lot of grip when it's dry, but they slide a lot like crazy when it's wet. You don't want all that power when you're driving in the rain. You don't want all that power when you're going sideways. I don't even put the car sideways anymore, because that boost creeps in so fast, and it's harder to calculate if that thing is gonna really like hit sideways or lose control and things like that. Just play it safe, guys. Just have some more responsibility when you guys have a boosted car, or just a car that's got a lot of horsepower. That is basically everything that I wanted to cover in this video. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my G35. I love boosting it. I don't regret it at all. Even though I'm in tons of debt, I don't regret it at all. I love taking the car. I love making content for you guys. I want to bring it to the track. I brought it to Tennessee. That was amazing. One of the best times of my life was enjoying time with this car while it's boosted. I have come up and kind of push myself on top of the whole debt situation. I should be completely out of debt within the next year, which is amazing, but it's still a whole year of time where I'm sitting here trying to pay off the G35, and the build engine-wise has been done for like a year now, so I'm just sitting here, you know, working my balls off trying to pay for this build. But regardless, I don't regret it. I love the car, and just a couple of things you guys should take into consideration when boosting your 350Z or G35 or any car that you guys own. Huge shout out to you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys smash that like button and watch all the ads, because I'm trying to pay off all my debt here. Now, all jokes aside, thanks for watching again, and I'm gonna see you guys next Friday at 5. Take it easy.